Can you hold on to that?
Hey, what's up? This is your girl, Taylor Wilde. Welcome back to Wilde on Season 4, the podcast where you get the insider's view of the weird, wonderful, wild world of wrestling on Wednesdays. Today's guest has been involved with professional wrestling for over 23 years. That's over half of his life. He's known on the independents for being an ROH staple during the company's glory years, which is exactly where I met him in 2004. These days, he is part of the creative and productive team for Impact Wrestling. The stars aligned for us to work together again when I made my comeback earlier last year. But most importantly, this person is a spiritual being and, like myself, is living both outwardly and authentically in his beliefs. Ladies and gentlemen, my man, Jimmy Jacobs.
I'm excited about this.
Yay! Okay, so I don't know if you've heard my podcast or you know much about it, but basically the whole thing about it being a professional wrestling podcast is the fact that I'm a wrestler, you're a wrestler, and everything else we talk about is really nothing to do with wrestling.
I watched the one with what's her name? Kaya?
Oh yeah, Kaya McKenna.
Yeah, because I know I knew she was involved in witchcraft as well. So I was like, all right, what's this about?
Yeah.
Like, right away, you guys are talking about the divine feminine and the alignment of thoughts, emotions, and actions. I'm like, yeah, this is the conversation I want to do.
Good. Where did your journey start?
Yeah, so I'm just going to preface this with saying, as you and I talk and we explore different ideas, it's likely that I'm wrong about a lot of things, right?
Oh.
And I used to have a podcast, and I look back at some of the stuff I thought 3 years ago, and it was wrong. So I just say that to ask for the grace of the listeners if I say something that they disagree with, or they even want to go, oh, that's right. It's like think for yourself, think these things through for yourself, because really, when you talk about the beginning of my spiritual journey, it started with the idea that maybe I know nothing. Okay. I was in rehab in 2017. I had been, on this same cycle of drugs for, the past whatever dozen years. I was 33 years old.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was like, I was in there. I was working for WWE. I have friends that are top guys in WWE. None of us are happy. Yeah. And you go, what are we doing? How did my perception of reality and the map that I've created of reality, and I didn't think of exactly in these terms at that time, but how did the map that I created of reality get me into this pit? How did it get me here? Obviously, what I aimed at as my highest virtues or my pillars of perception were not right. And so I had to start over and go, maybe I know nothing. And that involved deconstructing everything that I thought. Over the past 5 years, I've had a complete just explosion of the identification of self, of existence as such, of society and culture and everything that's going on. Those things have utterly exploded. And so getting out of rehab, I sort of, I wasn't looking for a spiritual journey.
Right.
I didn't buy some books and go, oh, good. Oh, this is, Eckhart Tolle. Oh, I get it now. It was kind of this intuitive thing where as my career in 2018 wasn't going how I wanted it to, and I just intuitively started to see that my identification with my career was bringing me suffering. And I started to say to myself things like, well, I am not my career, which means I am not my creativity. I am not my intelligence. I'm not my successes. I'm not my failures. I'm not any of these things. And it started a process of peeling away these layers of who I thought I was, and then asking the question, well, like, wait a minute, who am I then? And then that became, no, it's not who am I, it's what am I? What is underneath this character that I've created for myself, this thing that I thought I was, that has been reinforced to me throughout my entire life, from the day that my parents named me Chris. And Chris thought he was special or thought he was not special or whatever he thought he was. What's beneath that? And the answer to that question is self-discovery that we're all, yearning for.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting that you use the word explosion, because I think for anyone that experiences a spiritual awakening, it's not like this love and light kind of moment. It's like this full on, I don't even, like, explosion is the perfect word. It's just like, it can almost be attributed to like a depression, because what you thought of yourself, what you associated with yourself it doesn't exist anymore. And you have trouble associating with really anything. And with wrestling, where we have to build these characters and be bigger than life, and what we believe are core values in the wrestling world is already completely different than the norm. So I think as a spiritual being, you're just like, what the fuck is happening?
Well, yeah. I mean, Jimmy Jacobs is a character on top of a character.
Yes.
Jimmy Jacobs might be a more intentional character, but Christopher Scoville is the character that I thought I was. I thought I was certain things. Yeah. So I'm just bad at managing my emotions. That's all I am. But you go, wait a minute. That's just a habit that I've learned, and I can work on managing my emotions, and I can become good at that. Yeah. So I am not that thing. Right. Oh, I am my intelligence. It's like, am I my intelligence? Well, who am I when I'm stupid then?
Right.
If I'm smart, who's showing up when I'm stupid?
Right.
If I'm loyal, who is it who's not loyal? Mm-hmm. And you start to see that all these different, descriptors are just ways that we like to conceptualize ourselves. Yes. So the ego keeps us in this place of familiarity to go, oh, I know where I am. I'm this guy. And it becomes an explosion, because ultimately it's a death, and many deaths, right, of the ego. Right. And the ego keeps you in that place of familiarity. And so to rip that away, and for aspects of your identified self to die, mm-hmm, it brings you into chaos, and you are lost, and you don't know where you are, and you're in the darkness. Yeah. So it's not.
And it's interesting that you were in rehab, and I imagine, like, your rehabilitation process, did they focus on like 12-step, or was there like Christianity or any of that stuff?
None of those things. What rehab did for me more than anything else was just to pull me out of the story I was living. Mm. I was living the story of drugs. I was living the story of professional wrestling, yeah, and the pro wrestling journey I'd been on. So the thing it really did for me was pull me out of that for 30 days, away from everything, right, so I could just have the space to reevaluate things, and the perspective to look at things from a different point of view than I had before. Yeah. But life, to your point, is constant death and rebirth. Yeah. That's the cycle. That's what it is. I mean, this is part of the story of, let's say solar cults or, yeah, solar deities, is the sun, in addition to being the energy source of this plane of existence, mm-hmm, is the perfect representation of death and rebirth. And this is the story. As this moment dies, the next one is born. Yeah. And so at its ultimate end, everything you think you are will have to die. Mm-hmm. All the dead wood will have to burn away. Yeah. And that's the process we're on. Yeah. Whether you know it or not, here is letting go of all the things that aren't you. And you hold on to an identity for a while, and that brings you to a certain point. But at some point, that needs to die away. Like, I say it's kind of like a wave. Yeah. It's like you ride the crest of the wave. But if you stay on too long, it'll bring you down. So you want to ride the crest of the wave of the identity you're currently taking until you see that identity no longer serves you, yes, and you let that die. But those deaths are difficult.
Oh gosh.
Like, what am I going to do? Not be in the pro wrestling business anymore?
Yeah.
Since 15 years old,
Yep.
that's going to be a big one that's going to have to die someday.
Yep.
And those are hard,
Yep. You mentioned your spiritual journey had nothing to do with like picking up a book and being like, oh, well, this is it. Like, this is some new age psychology bullshit. Like, I can get behind this, no problem. And I think for me, I identify as a witch, and like all my rituals and what I find very grounding is aligned with like a individual practitioner's view of witchcraft. And you don't need any of the things that social media kind of associates with witchcraft. Like, you don't need crystals. You don't need fancy tarot cards. And you talked about like divination, but you also mentioned intuition. And I wonder for you, like, I know you said you were living the pro wrestling life, and I've been in the business forever too. Like, it's, it's drugs, it's party, it's rock and roll. And there's a lot of injuries and you self-medicate. But I wonder for you, since you're obviously a highly sensitive person, do you think that was a way of you coping with not knowing how spiritually aligned you were and how sensitive you were to the rest of the world?
I mean, certainly, I look back and I see the utility of drug use. Mm-hmm. I see that to the degree that it does. It felt like it brought me closer to God. Like, it brought me closer to who I really thought I was, who I really felt I was. Like, taking to Vicodin got it did away with the walls that I had up and the insecurities. And it, even though in this faux manufactured false way, it brought me closer to something that I was looking for. Okay. And so I see the utility in it, and I see the yearning for the divine that was used for, mm-hmm. although it's not the proper use, mm-hmm. right? That's not how you actually get in touch with what you're looking for. Yeah. But it was the best way I knew how.
Right. And I think too, like, for me, like, I stopped drinking in January, and for me it was like in a really organic thing, and it was part of this big death and rebirth I went through again. And I'm really thankful that I had alcohol in my life for a long time, because for me, I don't know if I would have completely survived mentally where I was if it wasn't for alcohol. But it also really dampened being a highly sensitive person. So now I couldn't imagine my life with drinking. So do you kind of have that dichotomy with drugs at all?
I don't yearn for drugs.
Good.
It's not something that I go, oh, I miss that, because mostly the utility that I used drugs for, yeah. I've discovered in myself now, more or less.
Right.
It's always the journey, but there's not that itch that needs to be scratched. That's done.
Right.
There's something else forward.
So tell us about the Jimmy Jacobs spiritual day. Like, what does your day look like? Do you meditate? Or do you read? Do you turn off of social media? Like, what do you do?
It depends where I'm at, and I say that where I'm at as far as self-care goes, because mm-hmm. it wanes, right? There's ebbs and flows, sure. And I don't want to make it seem like
you got your shit together.
It's like on the good days, I leave my phone in the other room, and I wake up and move my body and all this sort of stuff. But on other days, the phone's next to me. I pick up my phone in the morning. I don't know, this morning I played some 80s party music, and I jumped on that little trampoline back there for a little bit and just moved my body. And
that's amazing.
I went out and I working on digging out another garden bed out back, and then I laid outside or sat outside naked in the sun.
Good.
Did some sun charging as I read. A lot of times I'll lay out in the sun. I've been listening to the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Mostly in the mornings for that, yeah. But I'm reading a handful of books now. Yeah. But I was reading Brave New World out there this morning.
Oh, okay.
And there's meditation and different sort of movements, grounding.
Yep, grounding's a big one, I think, especially in wrestling and around our world of technology. For me, sometimes it's just going outside and walking, as stupid as it sounds.
Oh, it's not stupid at all. It's like, what are you going to do? Be surrounded by the inorganic environment of, this man-made stuff.
Yeah.
It's like we are nature.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you forget that at your own peril.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a growing, thought process or ignorance today, thinking that we're not a part of nature, thinking that we don't have a nature,
Oh, I know.
thinking that there's not a proper way of being that facilitates
Yeah.
flourishment, right?
Yeah.
Like there are certain things that a man or woman needs for flourishing.
Yeah.
And you can go, well, you need water, you need food. It's like, yeah, but you need a lot more too.
Yeah.
And you can start to put together what these things are to learn to take care of yourself. Because I wasn't taught how to take care of myself. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I started learning that like 35 or 36. Just what does it mean to take care of myself? What does it mean to have that maintenance on me so I'm charged up?
Well, I love that. Like the naysayers, whether it's like, oh, like witchcraft is like, life isn't really hocus pocus, or spirituality is all about this like new age granola thing. But, someone like myself who really closely follows the lunar cycle, like there's a reason that people say that everyone acts squirrely around a full moon. And if you don't think that nature is grounding, you don't think stepping on the grass without shoes on or touching a tree isn't re-energizing. It's like, as a first responder who is a spiritual person, I will literally book off work. Like I plan holidays around the full moon because people get fucking crazy.
What's going on with the moon? Like, what is that thing up there? I'm super suspicious of the moon. I know there's like a lot of like lunar sort of like worship out there, but I'm like, I don't know about this thing. Like, it's like, full moon, people get a little extra weird. Yeah. It's, if you're, they call it your moon cycle for the female menstruation. It's like, what is this? Does this moon want your blood? Is it harvesting? Well, I mean, I'm serious. Like, look, even the Bhagavad Gita talks about how if in the reincarnation cycle, if you don't ascend, the moon is what is where you go to reincarnate here. And I've certainly heard people who believe in the Saturn moon matrix talk about the moon being a harvesting place, and you can only see one side of it.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, yeah, it's turning at the exact same time. It's rotating at the exact same way. It's going around the sun. Yeah. Like, I don't know about that. I don't know what the freaking moon is, man. I'm suspicious of the concept.
I don't know. I think it's like the oldest clock we have. That's one thing. And there is something to be said about, everyone getting into this like divine feminine notion and feminine energy. And if you're not on birth control and you're, really not taking any pharmaceuticals, you can have these apps or just use an old fashioned calendar, pen and paper. And when you spend more time outside and when you get more grounded, even if it wasn't aligned, like over a cycle of a few months, you can sync your period up with the moon cycle. And whether you menstruate on a full moon or a new moon really dictates whether you're more masculine and feminine. And when you're going through a death and rebirth, that can actually switch and you can see how it affects your life. So you can be skeptical of the moon, but my witchy self is all about the fucking moon.
Yeah, I think the moon's got you. I think that you're praying to it, you're bleeding for it, the moon's just harvesting your energy. That's all it's doing. Maybe. I don't know what that thing is.
Okay, fair.
Look, hold on. On a solar eclipse, the moon is the exact same size as the sun. The sun's 400 times bigger than the moon. It just so happens the sun is also 400 times as far away from the Earth as the moon is. Like, that's a big coincidence. I don't know what the organizational structure of the universe is, but it's weird, and the moon's up to something.
What is like the number one thing that you're fixated on right now? Not the moon, obviously. What's haunting you at night?
I mean, look, I'm on this new part of my journey now. This year, about 3 months ago, I purchased my first home.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I moved to rural Georgia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I bought a 7-acre property out here.
So you can tan naked as much as you want.
Yeah. And, learning more, taking more responsibility over different aspects of my life, and that's daunting. A part of the death and rebirth is always like the sort of, let's call it like the death of the child inside of you.
Oh God,
and
yeah.
the child wants to be taken care of, and learning to let that part die and step into the manhood. Because just as there's I think a resurgence of and a recognition of the divine feminine, there's also a certain group of people that are also seeing the necessity for the divine masculine. Because of course you have to have the two together. Sure. And masculinity has been sort of vilified, and it's been distorted. There is this distortion in masculinity. It's going, what does it mean to step into your masculine energy? Because I was, for most of my life, like, I grew up on Free to Be You and Me, like, gender's all a construct, and these social roles, these gender roles, I got no time for it. But then, in the last couple of years, going, actually, no, there is something that it means to be a man and to be a woman, and to, harness that balance of masculine and feminine energy in all of us.
Agreed.
And it varies from person to person, of course. I'm not saying that men need to be like us and women need. I'm not saying the recognition of those two energies and finding the proper balance for the individual. I think it's really interesting when you talk about starting to step into your feminine energy. And I have a lot of women in my life who I know that have said the same thing. To go, I've been in my masculine my whole life, and now I'm finally learning to surrender, to let go, to open up, to be free. Yeah. And some of that, I think, is because there has been a distortion and a lack of divine masculine. Sure. When the divine masculine can't step up to its proper role, then women have to sort of try to step into that masculine energy, and it gets them all discombobulated. And to finally go, actually, I don't need to be the hustler. I don't need to be doing this, pushing this. I don't need to try to be like a man. Yes. I try to be like the being that I am. And I think there are things that that are in certain resonance with what we are, and finding those things is, I think, a big part of the journey. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of us women that feel they've been in their divine masculine their whole lives, I think it's it's a bit of a veil, and it's about being vulnerable. Like, we've been told our whole lives as women, like, you got to be tough, and you can do what the men can do, and fucking all that Rosie Riveter shit. And it's it's about not stepping back. Like, people might jump on me for saying that, but I mean, like, to recalibrate that balance, as you talk about, in order to be in my divine feminine, you being able to be in your divine masculine, we have to meet in the middle somewhere. And I don't think the pendulum was in a good place 100 years ago.
I'm not certainly making the claim that the way our culture has perceived masculinity or has displayed masculinity is proper.
Yes.
Because it's not. That's a distortion.
Yes, I agree.
And there's distortion for femininity as well. And I see, if you look at let's say the archetype of the mother, and then the distortion of that ends up being something like the overprotective mother. And I think on some level, our culture suffers from that. Yeah. We're too taken care of. I can press a button on my phone and whatever I want is delivered to me. I don't have to step up and do things for myself. So it's finding the proper balance, and what the proper sort of, let's say, way of being, the embodiment of those energies, and finding the balance. And the balance, of course, between the divine mother and the divine father creates the divine son. Sure. I mean, this is the Holy Trinity, and I love my Christian brothers and sisters, but I'm sorry, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's like you're missing one of the key points of creation, which is the divine mother. And of course, the Catholics sort of see this, and that's why they venerate Mary. But those are the two things of creation, and the union between the two is the generative principle
Yeah.
of reality.
Yeah. And the universe.
Of course. That's
The
how it
real
works.
OG.
Yes, exactly.
That was probably one of my biggest things on my journey, and stepping out of my masculine and being able to be vulnerable. I was succumbing to the universe. You can't control everything. And, we've heard that our whole lives. But what the fuck did that actually mean? You can't control everything. Control what? Who are we controlling? And now I realize that, no, the plan is already out there. You just have to be awake enough. And, of course we have free will and free choice, and your path always changes, like you say, and it ebbs and it flows. But really giving in and, being open to the universe and the path has been life-changing for me.
Yeah, the idea of surrendering is certainly something that I'm working on, and it constantly evolves on what that means to me. It's like, what does that mean to surrender? And at this point in my journey, it means something like doing what's right or true, doing the truest thing you can do, and then surrendering to the outcome.
Right.
The way is not to try to get something here. You don't look at the ends. You look at what's in front of you and the means. You go, what's the best thing I can do right now? And you trust in the organizational structure of reality that by doing the best thing possible will happen. By doing the truest thing, let's say, the best thing would happen.
And I'm going to use a very real example that you and I are really familiar with in giving into the universe and the journey is I made my comeback after 10 years of wrestling and it was going great. And there was a big buildup. And then all of a sudden I went through this really horrible divorce. COVID was at peak. I had to step back. I couldn't leave Canada. I couldn't come to work anymore. And it was like this big buildup. And I was, so riding high on this journey and coming back to wrestling, which was reliving who I was and becoming more aligned with the person that I wanted to be. And I could have really hit rock bottom. And I did to some extent, especially with like the custody battle and the divorce and the money and the, losing this career that I was reinvigorated for. But I actually think I'm in a much better place now to come back to wrestling, and I'm way stronger and I'm way more authentic and I feel way more aligned, and I'm like this completely different version of Taylor Wilde. And if I was told that like a year ago when it all imploded and there was another death and rebirth going, I would have been like, this is fucking bullshit. Like my life is in shambles right now. But I did all the things I'm supposed to do. I rode the wave and here we are. And like, fuck. Put me in, coach.
When you're in, when something's happening to you,
yep.
You think it's this disaster. There's this Taoist fable where there's a father and his son. They live out in the woods, and they have a horse, and the horse runs away, and the neighbor goes to the father, "Oh, that's so bad." He goes, "Maybe." And then the horse comes back, and it brought a bunch of other horses. And the neighbor goes, "Oh, that's great." And the father says, "Maybe." And then the son rides one of the new wild horses, and he falls off, and he breaks his arm. And the father goes, "Oh," or the neighbor goes, "Oh, that's terrible." Father goes, "Maybe." And then the people from the army come in, and they're recruiting for the army, but the son's got the broken arm, so they can't recruit him from the army. They can't draft him. And the neighbor goes, "Oh, that's so good." And the father goes, "Maybe," because you just don't know where the next thing leads you. And truthfully, it is through the pit and it is through the abyss that you find the treasure. My favorite quote, I think, is Joseph Campbell, which the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So it is, basically that which you want the most will be found in the place you least want to look.
Right.
It is in fundamentally, if the abyss doesn't swallow you whole and absolutely destroy you, which sometimes it does, if that doesn't happen, then there is a treasure inside of it, and you get to take the treasure home. That's what the story is. That is the story of reality.
Yeah. And it hurts, and it's scary, and it's fucking terrible, but that's where spirituality comes into play. That's why you have rituals. That's why you have, these concrete beliefs, and they're not concrete, I shouldn't say that, but it's giving into the greater good. That is the universe and lack of control. You have lack of control. That's giving into that.
You have control over you, and I think that's enough. I do believe, and this is a belief, but I believe the structure of reality is good. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure of it. I'm not positive of it, but I believe it's good. I believe that if you act in accordance to the proper way of being, the right result comes out. I believe that it is a truism that, in the face of adversity and in the darkness, that if you navigate it properly, you come out better than you did. I think that's the human story. I think so. That is objectively true. It's not like, this might happen. Yeah. That is the objective, proper way to deal with reality, and not through bitterness and resentment and hatefulness, but willingly confronting the darkness and navigating it properly and coming out the other end more than what you were.
I think that's perfect. I truly, that's what I believe too. So
the superpower of human beings is to transmute tragedy into strength. Some of the greatest sort of attributes come from the worst scars. People who go through these terrible things that navigate it properly. I was talking to my friend the other day who's going through a hard time. I was talking about Viktor Frankl, who was in the Nazi concentration camps, and the how he navigated it, and the brilliance that came out of him, or Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who did the same thing with gulags in Soviet Russia. And in the face of pure evil, it worked. In the face of pure evil, it worked to not hold on to bitterness and resentment, but to keep their head high and to not point fingers, but to claim responsibility for themselves and what they can claim responsibility for. And through that, they transmuted it and became superheroes. It's like...
And I'm so glad you said that, because, we talk about releasing to the universe, but life happens. There's shitty things that happen to all of us every day, big, small, indifferent. But you have control over you and how you feel. And that's the power of spoken word and manifestation and, this transmutation, like you say, of energy. I used to say, when people ask me how I'm doing, well, like fucking whatever, like it's okay. But like, people ask me now and I'm like, I'm great. I am great, because I have so much good in my life. I have a roof. I have a job. I'm doing what I love. I have a beautiful son, and I truly, truly feel amazing. And even just saying that makes me feel better. And I do think putting that energy out there and, the power of spoken word, saying, I feel great, that has so much power and so much influence, like on your day and who you are and how you see yourself and self-worth. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, look, words are powerful spells, and I do my best to not cast spells on me that I don't want to be subjugated to. And this is something I started to learn about 5 years ago. The guy that was driving me to rehab, I was talking to him. He picked me up from the airport, and I said something. I said, I'm bad at something. I forget what it was. I'm bad at this. He goes, well, I like to say, I stopped saying that. Instead, I say, I'm working on that. And I thought it was just such, whatever at the time.
Totally.
Now, there are so many linguistic traps, as I call them, that I'm aware of. Like, I won't say things like, yeah, he made me mad, or that made me. It's like, no. Nobody makes me anything. I take responsibility for my emotions. Yeah. You don't make me this. I can experience anger. I can experience frustration. And I stopped saying things like, I am mad, because I am mad identifies me as the anger. It's like, no. I'm experiencing anger. And so these they might seem, that means nothing. But the words and thoughts create a reality. I mean, we're in a whatever you want to call this, a thought form simulation. So it's through those thoughts and the words and the, let's call it, energetic imprint, which is really electromagnetic frequencies that go through tonal fields and crystallize into what we call physical reality, create this thing.
Yeah.
So take responsibility for what you say and what you think.
It's true. It's totally true because you are making your own reality based on your thoughts and your words. And that's not bullshit.
Right. It's certainly, it's a co-creation with the natural laws of the universe. We
Yes.
co-create our reality with those laws. So learning what the laws are and how reality works helps one better navigate this thing.
So this spiritual death and rebirth, becoming the best version of your higher self, it also creates you, it doesn't create you, but you eliminate so many people, so many relationships out of your life, whether you're conscious of it, unconscious of it, it's part of the process. What have you noticed in the past few years? Have you lost a lot of friends? Have you gained a lot of new friends? Have you found your people?
It's really interesting. I moved to Arizona, to Phoenix, about 2.5 years ago, and meeting new friends there, literally everybody I met was in some sort of, let's say, alignment with where I was. There was nobody that was not on some level where I was at. And it was fascinating to watch. I was like just blown away in, when you touch the mystery of reality, it is humbling, and to me, it breaks me when you start to see that this physical reality isn't what we think it is.
Yeah.
That it is us. It is all connected through us. It was a very just humbling, grateful, and almost mind-blowing experience. Now, look, I moved to Georgia, and I don't know anybody here.
Yeah.
But I so happened to just find, and I'm part of this online group I'm a part of, just so happens to be a couple that own an organic farm 30 minutes from me.
Oh, wow.
And so I drove down there last week, and I'm going to start volunteering there starting tomorrow, actually.
Oh,
and
cool.
So if you're making the steps to walk into the thing you're supposed to be, the structure of reality puts what you need right in front of you.
Please head over to the Wilde on YouTube channel. And if you like alliteration, then you'll check out weekly content that is wild, happens on Wednesdays, wondrous, and likely weird, and anywhere you enjoy listening to podcasts. I like to end every podcast episode with my 10 tailor-made questions. It's like a speed round. You ready to play?
Sure.
Okay. Name one beauty product you cannot live without.
There's a new toothpaste I'm using called Rise Well that mineralizes your teeth, apparently. So,
well, you have lovely teeth, so it's working. What is your favorite exercise? Please tell me it's trampolining.
That's the one I'm doing a lot now. Just moving some chi through my body, get some of that stuck energy unstuck.
What is your biggest pet peeve? Now, be careful how you word this.
It's a little, I suppose, ironic to answer this, but I guess finger pointing and people stuck in their victim mentality. And I try not to be judgmental about that, because we're all on our journey, and that's okay. But that's one of the most frustrating things for me to deal with, maybe because I just don't know how to navigate that. When your friend just wants to be a victim, and you go, do I just hold space for this? Do I try to help them navigate it? Or
I think you can see it for what it is. Like my ex is a narcissist, so everything is he's the victim, and nothing is rational, and everything is my fault. I support that, but I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there's an answer. I think there's mental health issues involved.
Well, but look, mental health issues are something that point to a deeper misalignment with
yes.
Right, so.
Do you have a celebrity crush?
I had a crush on Amy Jo Johnson when I was in 5th grade, the Pink Power Ranger. So we'll go with that.
Perfect. Favorite band or artist?
I really like Blue October. Justin Furstenfeld, the lead singer. I saw him in concert. He plays these acoustic sets, and he's in alignment with a lot of the stuff that his music spoke to me.
That's really funny you say that, because when I moved to McDonough, Georgia for WWE, when I was in the developmental system, that was the first time I heard that band. And are they from Georgia? Are they Southern or I don't know. Okay. So they were on the radio all the time. But yeah, that was, I associate Georgia with Blue October. So that's a really interesting answer.
I also love John Denver. So.
Oh, okay. Do you have a secret vice? Now, this isn't going to apply to you, but like drinking a glass of wine in the shower.
I mean, vaping is the big monkey on my back.
Vaping.
It's terrible. It's just it's terrible. I gotta.
But I mean, it's probably substituting for something, and you'll get there when you're ready.
All of these things. I stopped looking at like drug addiction as some sort of the top thing on some hierarchy of addiction, and sort of see everything in the same vein as they're all external ways of self-soothing, and the way forward is to learn to manage and regulate your own nervous system without needing external things.
Which is really fucking hard.
This is my adult pacifier. Basically.
Yeah, we all have one. It's okay. What wrestler has the best entrance music?
Well, Hulk Hogan in the '80s is pretty darn good.
Classic.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, NWO was good too. There's a lot of good ones.
Okay. What is your drink of choice? Obviously, it doesn't have to be alcoholic.
I drink a lot of water. I mean, there's debates whether water actually hydrates you, but I have my water distiller, and then I restructure and remineralize the water. I've got all this whole, yeah.
I'm still reading about it all. I don't know how I feel about the whole like alkaline, mineral, unmineral. Like,
yeah, water's insane.
Water's insane.
Water's insane. I mean, it's one of the four physical elements of creation. Yes. It certainly seems to have a memory. It stores information in it. It might have a sort of a two-way transmission. It might be the bipole antenna from matter to spirit. I mean, look, without water, life isn't possible. It's like you think you know about water. It's like you have no idea about water.
Oh, yeah. I'm starting a deep dive, and I'm like, there's not enough time in the day.
Look up, if you see, I forget his first name, Dr. Emoto out of Japan did those experiments with water where he showed that water, structures itself differently depending on the information basically received. But then look up Veda Austin.
Okay.
If you look it up even on Instagram, it's insane. I was in a group and she gave a presentation in this group, and it was the most mind-blowing thing to see the information that water can hold and then express, and the way water expresses itself. This is unbelievable stuff. It's like you think you know about something, you have no idea. But also fluoride's poison, so get that.
Just that little side note.
Yeah.
What has been your most embarrassing moment in the ring?
These botches that you have when you're younger that show up once in a while. There's one, I was doing like a ladder match by like 04, 05.
Yeah.
And I got the ladder set up the ring, the other guy's on the outside of the ring, and I jump off the ladder, but I don't jump off of it with the ladder like forwards. I jump off of it sideways, which of course it has nothing holding it up sideways.
Right.
And so I jump off and I fall forward and I tumble onto the top rope and spill.
Oh, no.
It looks like I almost died. But it's one of these things that pops up like once in a while still. Like, oh, remember when you did that?
Yeah, thanks, Internet. Cool. Where can our listeners find you on the interwebs? Do you have social media?
Yeah, I'm still on Instagram for the time being at Jimmy Jacobs X. My website's jimmyjacobs.com, although it's never updated. But if I'm ever off of social media and you need to find me, go to my website. It's got my email address, and you can contact me. And
last one. Finish this lyric. Hate me today.
Hate me tomorrow.
Yeah, nailed it.
I see what's good for you.
That's my favorite Blue October song.
That's a good one.
I'm a terrible singer, so thank you for joining me on that. That was a spiritually enlightening episode for everybody. I know Jimmy and I really enjoyed that. It's not often that we get to have those kind of conversations, especially outside of the workplace, but in a way that we can share it with our listeners and our fans, because we are so much more than just these athletes, these professional wrestlers who are statistics with match wins, match losses, and these overly over-the-top personas. But in light of Wilde On starting, or should I say when I started this podcast instead of speaking in riddles, I really mentioned, and I mean it, that this is a place of inclusivity. And it's important to both Jimmy and I, we had a little debrief after we spoke, that although we were speaking about abstract thought and these theories and these ideas that don't necessarily apply or resonate to others, it's really important to us. But moreover, we were speaking about gender stereotypes, and we spoke about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and how we were in this place in the world where we need to find more of an equilibrium between masculine and feminine. We are speaking about this in a spiritual way, so it's not how it's not to be taken literal. But that being said, I want to shed some light on the LGBTQ community, because if you are a transitioning person, or you identify with being male, you identify with being female, even though you're cis man or cis female, male, female, that doesn't mean that the divine feminine and the divine masculine does not apply to you. It applies to everybody universally. We are not talking about gender stereotypes that men go to work and women are in the kitchen, because you all should know at this point in the Wilde On history that is absolutely not what I stand for. Neither do any of my guests, or they would not be welcomed with such open arms on my show. So I just wanted to draw a little bit of focus onto that. But otherwise, that was a really great episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, as we're really trying to do with Wilde On. The only thing that has to do with wrestling is the fact that both myself and the guests are involved in the professional wrestling world. Now, I've known Jimmy for 16 years easily, and I've seen the evolution and the rise and fall of him, and I think it's really cool that he can speak about it in this really openly transparent way and be so authentic and live his truth. He's had a lot of hardships with living that way. People don't take him seriously. They think he's zany. I love him. I'm so thankful for who he is, and I hope all of us can hold space and have learned something a little bit from hearing myself and Jimmy's story today about our death and rebirth and how it's affected our professional wrestling lives and our overall happiness. Speaking of happiness, I would not be able to do this podcast without my badass punk rock girl band, the Wilde On team. My queen, my right-hand woman, editor and producer, Rochelle Douris, the woman who does all the things on the internet and marketing that I don't understand, but I absolutely need, Madison Golshani, and our little helper, our sweet baby angel, the woman that sings the Wilde On theme song, Sam Smith. Thank you. I love you guys. And until next week, keep calm and Wilde On.